Some of the strongest things in this world aren't made of iron or stone. They're made of simple human decency, offered when it costs something to give. I grew up hearing my grandmother say that mercy is the hardest work a person can do, especially when nobody's watching to give you credit for it. This story isn't about grand gestures or dramatic rescues. It's about a man who found a woman stealing from him and chose kindness over judgment. About a woman who'd lost everything, learning to stand upright again. About two lonely people discovering that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone else help carry the weight. It's a quiet truth, the kind that doesn't make headlines but changes lives all the same. The eggs burned Clara's palms. 6 of them, still warm from the hens, cradled against her belly through the worn calico. Her hands shook. 3rd morning she'd come to this barn. 3rd morning stealing what she couldn't pay for. The chickens went quiet. She froze. His shadow crossed the threshold before his boots did. Big man, work-worn, watching her from the doorway with eyes that had seen too much and said too little. She'd been so careful. Dawn light, empty ranch, not empty enough. Clara straightened. Didn't run. Dad there with his eggs in her apron, chin up, waiting for him to fetch the sheriff. The brown dress hung loose on her frame. She'd punched 2 new holes in the belt this week. Her carpet bag sat by the door. Everything she owned inside it. He looked at her hands, at the eggs, at the pale stripe on her right ring finger, where gold used to be. You've been taking them long. His voice was rust and disuse. 3 days. Hers was worse hoarse from not speaking to another soul since the train depot 5 miles back. He studied her. She studied the dirt floor. Could work for them, he said finally. The eggs. Oh, if you're reading this from a place where neighbors still help neighbors, where a handshake means something, I'd be grateful to know. Sometimes it helps to remember there's still good folks out there. The room smelled like dust and closed-up air. Clara stood in the doorway, looking at the narrow bed, rope mattress sagging in the middle. Pieced quilt faded to colors that might have been blue once. Single window facing east. Curtain mended with thread that didn't match. She set her carpetbag down. The floor creaked. One other dress inside gray cotton, nearly as worn as the brown. A daguerreotype she didn't look at, just placed face down on the washstand. Hairbrush missing half its bristles. That was it. Everything. The pitcher held water gone stale. She poured it anyway. Watched it turn the basin gray. Scrubbed her face until her skin hurt. Didn't look in the mirror. The kitchen table was pine, scarred from years of use. 2 plates set out thick ironstone, 1 chipped at the rim. Garrett stood at the stove. Didn't turn when she came in. Cold cornbread, buttermilk, beans that smelled like yesterday. She sat where he pointed, took a piece of cornbread, broke it small, ate it in pieces, making it last. The buttermilk was sour-sweet, cold from the well. She drank it slow. He ate. She ate. The clock ticked from somewhere in the other room. Chickens need feeding twice, he said. His voice startled her. She'd gotten used to the silence. Dawn and 4 o'clock. Collections dawn. Before they get broody. All right. More quiet. Just forks on plates. The scrape of chair legs. After. He took her outside. Late light turning everything gold and gray. Showed her the chicken yard wire rusted in spots. Gate hanging crooked. The shed where the feed was kept, burlap sacks. cracked corn, oyster shells in a separate bin. That one's mean. He nodded at a red hen. Goes for your hand. Clara watched the birds scratch and peck. Noticed the garden plot beyond the fence, more weeds than anything else now. Posts rotting, wire sagging. What happened to the garden? He looked at it for a long time. No one to tend it. She didn't ask who used to. The answer was in his voice. They stood there as the light failed. Finally, she said, "Where do you want me for meals, kitchen or—" He frowned at her like she'd spoke something foolish. Table's big enough for two. That night, she lay awake counting ceiling beams. Heard him moving in the other room, boots on floorboards. The squeak of his own bed, heard him cough, heard the house settle, heard him get up past midnight and pace. Dawn came cold. Clara's hands learned the weight of eggs, the warmth of them through the straw. Which nests to check first. The mean red hen went for her knuckles. She pulled back. Tried again. Got the eggs. In the kitchen. Coffee sat waiting. Still hot. She didn't call out thanks. Just poured a cup and drank it black. The gate hinge had been hanging by a single nail for days. She'd noticed it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Watched it swing wrong, scraping dirt. Thursday, she went to the shed, found a hammer and nails in a tobacco tin on the workbench, fixed it herself. Garrett saw it that evening, stood there looking at the gate, testing the swing, said nothing. Next morning, coffee was waiting, plus a biscuit wrapped in a cloth. Friday, she mended the torn feed sack with needle and thread from her own kit. Sewed it right there in the chicken yard, sitting on an overturned bucket. The rooster watched her, head cocked. Saturday, he said, "Got to take eggs to town, sell them, need supplies." Pause. "You want to come?" Her jaw went tight. She nodded anyway. The wagon was a buckboard, split rail sides pulled by 2 draft horses. The big one limped on his front left. 5 miles of ruts and dust and silence. And then, "How much land you got?" He glanced at her. She was looking at the fields rolling past. Prairie grass gone brown and gold. 400 acres. His hands were easy on the reins. Only working 70, maybe. Rest is just sitting there. Why? Can't do it alone. Simple as that. Truth without decoration. She nodded. Watched a hawk circle overhead. Wings spread wide, bagging the thermals. Town was bigger than she'd expected. False front buildings, church steeple, white against the sky. People on the boardwalk. The mercantile had a tin ceiling and smelled like coffee and new fabric and something sweet she couldn't name. Mrs. Henderson stood behind the counter. Smiled when Garrett walked in. Smile went stiff when she saw Clara behind him. 2 women by the bolt fabric stopped talking. Stared. Garrett set his hat on the counter. "Need 50 pounds of flour, 20 of sugar, pound of coffee." Mrs. Henderson wrote it down, and lips pressed thin, turned to Clara. "Which flour you prefer?" She blinked. "The cheaper one's fine." Didn't ask what's cheaper. He was still looking at her. Asked which you prefer. Mrs. Henderson's pen stopped moving. "Dakota Mills." Then, Clara said. Quiet. He nodded. "Dakota Mills. The coffee's Arbuckles. Ground here?" Added, not looking at the shopkeeper. "And a packet of garden seeds. Beans, squash, tomatoes." Clara hadn't asked for seeds. Her throat went tight. Mrs. Henderson measured the flour, counted out the sugar cone, ground the coffee beans in the big mill. Her movements were sharp, efficient, cold. She wrapped the seeds in brown paper, tied them with string pulled too tight. Garrett paid in silver dollars. They rang loud on the counter, outside. Clara started to speak. I didn't mean to. Nothing to say about it. He was looking at the horizon, not at her. Lifted the flour sack into the wagon bed. You work. I pay. That's how it goes. But his jaw was tight. He'd heard the whispers, too. She'd seen Mrs. Henderson lean toward the other women, seen their eyes follow them out. The wagon jolted over the ruts, heading back. Clara held the seed packets in her lap like something precious. Brown paper, black ink stamps. Harrison seed, 1883. Your wife, she said. Couldn't look at him. What was her name? Long silence. Just the creak of the wagon, the horse's hooves, the wind in the grass. Ellen, nothing else. Clara nodded. That night she slept through until dawn. First time since the train depot. First time in weeks, maybe months. Woke to the smell of coffee already made, and sunlight coming through the east window, and the sound of chickens outside waiting for their feed. Got up, dressed, went to the kitchen. The seed packets sat on the table where she'd left them, beside them. A small wooden box she hadn't seen before. She opened it. Inside a trowel, a hand rake, a dibber for transplanting. The handles were worn smooth from years of use. Someone's hands had shaped that wood. Someone who wasn't here anymore. She heard his boots on the porch. Closed the box quick, like she'd been caught at something. He came in, saw her standing there, saw the box open. Thought you might need those, he said. For the garden, if you're still wanting to try. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the table. These were hers. Not a question. He heard it anyway. Yeah. He poured himself coffee, looked out the window at the empty garden plot. She'd want them used. Clara picked up the trowel. The handle fit her palm like it had been waiting. I'll start today, she said. He nodded, drank his coffee, didn't look at her. But his voice, when he spoke again, had something in it she hadn't heard before. Something that made her chest hurt. Good, he said. She carried the tools outside. The morning was cool. Dew still on the grass. The garden plot waited 40 feet by 30, south-facing, choked with 2 years of weeds. She knelt in the dirt, pressed her palm against it, felt how the earth was still good underneath. Just neglected. Just waiting for someone to care again. Behind her. The kitchen door opened, closed. Footsteps crossed the yard. Garrett appeared with a second hoe. Didn't ask, didn't explain. Just walked to the far end of the plot and started breaking ground. The hoe bit into earth, gone hard from 2 years of neglect. Clara swung again, felt the jar up through her shoulders. Weeds had rooted deep she had to dig. Pull, shake the dirt loose, pile them to the side. Her palms started burning after the first hour. Didn't stop. The sun climbed. Sweat ran down her spine, soaked the back of her dress. She could hear Garrett working at the far end, the chunk of his hoe, his breathing, the scrape of roots being torn free. They worked toward each other through the morning. Didn't talk, just dug. By noon, they'd cleared half the plot. Her hands were raw, skin peeling where the blisters had already burst. She wiped her face with her sleeve, left dirt streaked across her cheek. Garrett straightened, looked at what they'd done, nodded, went to the well, drew up water, brought the dipper to her first. She drank, handed it back. He drank. They worked until the light started failing. Her back screamed. Her hands left blood on the hoe handle. Garrett had to call her twice before she heard him say supper was ready. She looked down at the turned earth, rich and dark underneath all those weeds. Something in her chest loosened. 3 weeks they worked that garden. Dawn to dusk, when the chickens were fed and the eggs collected. Clara's hands stopped bleeding after the first week. Started growing calluses, thick and yellow. Her shoulders got broader. Face went brown from the sun. The chickens were laying 17 eggs a day now, up from 9 when she'd started. She'd fixed the roosts, cleaned the nesting boxes, changed their water twice daily instead of once. The hens knew her voice. Even the mean red one stopped going for her hands. Garrett repaired the porch rail, swept the chimney, fixed the pump handle. Things he'd let go since Ellen died. Clara saw him working on them in the evenings, heard the hammer, smelled the fresh-cut wood. Sunday morning, she heated water in the big copper pot, washed her 2 dresses and all her underclothes in the yard with the lye soap she'd made herself. Hung them on the line strung between 2 cottonwood trees, the brown calico, the gray cotton, everything she owned flapping in the wind. Garrett watched from the barn. Thought she couldn't see him. She could. When the garden was cleared and turned, he brought out the seeds. They planted together, his hands showing her the depth for beans. 2 knuckles down, her fingers spacing them careful. 6 inches apart. Straight rows. "My mother kept a garden," she said. First time she'd mentioned family. Oklahoma Territory. Before what? She didn't say. He didn't ask. Just showed her where the tomato starts were. He'd bought them in town. Hadn't mentioned it. 6 plants in small pots. Dirt still damp. She planted them like they were children. Patted the earth gentle around each stem. They worked until the sun was gone and she could barely see the rows anymore. He had to call her in for supper bread and butter. Cold well water. Both too tired to cook anything else. Sat on the porch steps looking at the planted garden. Nothing showing yet. Just faith and dark earth and the ache of muscles learning new work. "Thank you," she said, voice quiet. "You did the work. For the chance to." He didn't answer, but he didn't get up and leave either. Just sat there beside her while the stars came out and the coyotes started their singing far off in the hills. Her hands were in her lap, palms up, split open and raw despite the calluses trying to form. The worst one was on her right thumb, tore open fresh that afternoon. Bled through the woe. Garrett stood, went inside, came back with a small tin, set it on the step beside her, went back to looking at the garden. She picked up the tin, label worn off, but she could smell it, lanolin and beeswax. Opened it. The salve was yellowish, soft. She used it, worked it into the cracks, the raw places, the blisters that hadn't burst yet. It stung, then cooled. Didn't say thank you again. He'd set it there without a word. She used it the same way. This was how they talked now, through things done, not things said. The first sprouts came up on a Tuesday. Clara saw them during the dawn egg collection, tiny green shoots pushing through the dark earth. Beans. She went back to check them at noon, at 4 o'clock, at dusk. Counted them. 23. By Friday there were more. The tomato plants had taken new leaves unfurling, stems thickening, The squash seeds were splitting the soil. She knelt in the dirt every evening, examining each plant like it might disappear if she looked away. Garrett found her out there one night past dark, checking by lantern light. "They'll grow whether you watch them or not," he said. "I know." But she kept watching anyway. The neighbors noticed. Had to. Smoke from the chimney at regular hours, now breakfast, dinner, supper. Washing on the line every Sunday. The garden plot going from weeds to turned earth to planted rows. 2 people working where there'd only been one. Mrs. Calhoun mentioned it to her husband while he was reading the newspaper. He lowered it, looked at her over his spectacles. "Garrett hired someone," she said, "for the chickens and such." "About time," he said. "Place was going to ruin. It's a woman." He raised the paper again. "Still needs the help." But she saw him watching when they drove past the Garrett place on their way to town. Saw him notice the mended gate, the swept porch, the garden coming to life in town. Mrs. Henderson told anyone who'd listen. "Living there," she said. "Right in the house. Not proper, not Christian." Calhoun, the old man's daughter, stopped folding fabric. "She works for him. Mama says, earns her keep. That's not the point." "Seems like it is. Actually," Mrs. Henderson's mouth went thin. She didn't like being contradicted by girls barely 20 years old, even if that girl was a Calhoun. The 3rd week of planting, a wagon came down Garrett's road. Clara was in the chicken yard, gathering eggs. She looked up, saw a woman driving older. Gray hair, good dress. The wagon stopped by the porch. Garrett came out from the barn, wiping his hands on his pants. The woman climbed down without waiting for help. "Mr. Garrett." "Mrs. Calhoun." "Heard you hired someone. Wanted to meet her." Not asking permission, stating fact. Clara set down the egg basket. Came over, felt every inch of her dirty dress, her sunburned face, her calloused hands. Mrs. Calhoun looked at her. Long look, taking everything in. "You know anything about preserving?" she asked. Clara blinked. "Some. My mother taught me." "Good, because those tomatoes are going to come in all at once. And you'll need jars. I've got extras. Mason jars, zinc lids. I'll bring them next week." She climbed back in the wagon, looked at Garrett. "Eggs are better quality than they've been in 2 years. Whatever you're paying her, it's worth it." Drove away before either of them could respond. Clara stood there, egg basket in hand, staring after the wagon. Garrett went back to the barn. That evening, sitting on the porch after supper, Clara said, "She didn't seem bothered. Mrs. Calhoun, she's got sense more than most. Mrs. Henderson doesn't. Mrs. Henderson's got opinions. Different thing entirely." Clara picked at a splinter in the porch step. "People are going to talk. Let them. It could hurt your business. Your standing." He looked at her then, really looked. "You planning to leave?" The question caught her somewhere behind her ribs. "No." "Then it doesn't matter what they say." But his jaw was tight. And that night, she heard him pacing again. Long after midnight, back and forth in his room, the floorboards creaking under his boots. Late July heat turned the air thick as syrup. Clara picked the first tomato at dawn, still wet with dew, warm where the sun had started touching it. Brandywine, deep red, heavy in her palm. She carried it to the kitchen, where Garrett was making coffee, set it on the table between them. He looked at it, looked at her, picked up his knife, cut it thick, 4 slices, juice running onto the cutting board, went to the cellar, came back with a salt box, pinched salt onto each slice, handed her one, took one himself. They ate standing there, juice on their chins, seeds on their fingers. It tasted like sun and earth and the work of her hands. She laughed. The sound came out of her before she could stop it, surprised and clear and real. Garrett froze, knife still in his hand, tomato slice halfway to his mouth, stared at her like she'd done something impossible. She stopped, put her hand to her mouth. "Don't," he said, voice rough. "Don't stop." But the moment was gone. She wiped her chin, looked away. He finished his slice in silence. The kitchen felt different now. Smaller, maybe, or bigger. She couldn't tell which. The garden gave and gave. Beans came in by the bushel. She picked them every morning. Filled 2 baskets, 3. The squash vines sprawled across half the plot. Yellow flowers turning into fruit, heavy enough to need both hands. Tomatoes ripened in waves. She brought them in by the apronful. Mrs. Calhoun kept her word. Arrived the next week with mason jars rattling in wooden crates, 24 of them, zinc lids in a separate box. "You know the water bath method?" she asked. "My mother showed me, long time ago. Same as riding a horse, you don't forget." She unloaded the crates onto the porch. "Sarah wants to help. She'll be over tomorrow." Clara opened her mouth, closed it, nodded. Sarah Calhoun came the next morning driving her father's buggy, 20 years old. Blonde hair pinned up neat, dress that hadn't seen a day's hard work. Clara looked down at her own hand stained with dirt and tomato juice, nails broken short. "Mama says you're doing all this yourself," Sarah said, looking at the garden. "That's impressive." Clara didn't know what to say to that. It needed doing. "Still," Sarah smiled, "show me what needs canning first." They worked in the kitchen, Clara at the stove with the copper pot boiling water, Sarah at the table cutting tomatoes. The room filled with steam, sweet tomato smell, vinegar bite when they started the pickles. Garrett came in at noon, stopped in the doorway. 2 women in his kitchen, jars lined up on every surface. The whole place alive with noise and heat and purpose. Sarah looked up. "Mr. Garrett, hope you don't mind the invasion." "No, it's—" He cleared his throat. "It's fine." But he stood there another minute, just watching. Clara felt his eyes on her, didn't look up from the pot. That evening, after Sarah had gone and the jars were cooling on the counter, 12 of them sealed and waiting, Garrett sat at the table looking at them. "Haven't seen that many full jars since Ellen died," he said. Clara was washing the copper pot. Kept washing. "How long were you married?" 8 years. She got the pneumonia in 82, February. 3 days from cough to fever to gone. His voice was flat. Fact. Not feeling. Doctor said there wasn't anything to be done. Just happened too fast. She set down the pot, dried her hands, sat across from him. "I'm sorry." "Me too." He looked at the jars again. She loved the preserving. Every summer, same as this, kitchen would smell like tomatoes for weeks. She'd make me taste everything. Make sure the salt was right. The sugar wasn't too much. He stopped, started again. Place felt dead after. Like the walls knew she was gone. Clara's throat was tight. "It doesn't feel dead now." He looked at her, held her eyes for a long moment. "No, it doesn't." The porch became their place. Every evening after supper and dishes, sometimes they talked, sometimes they just sat. She told him about the wedding that wasn't. Careful with the details. The man's name was Michael. He'd courted her for a year. She was a governess for a family in Pittsburgh. He worked in a law office. Asked her to marry him. She'd said yes. Found out a week before the wedding he already had a wife in St. Louis. 2 children. Confronted him, she said. Looked at her hands. He didn't deny it. Just put me on a train west. Gave me $50. Said to start over somewhere no one knew. And you did. What else was I going to do? Voice hard. Go back to Pittsburgh where everyone would know, where his wife might find out. Blame me for it. Wasn't your fault. Doesn't matter whose fault it was. I'm the one who got left. Garrett was quiet. Then people can be cruel when they're scared. He was probably terrified his wife would find out. So he made you disappear. Made me nothing. She wiped her eyes fast, angry at the tears. Like I didn't matter enough to tell the truth to... You matter. She looked at him. Here, he said. You matter here. Sunday morning, he said. Thinking of going to church. You want to come? Her hands went still on the coffee cup. I don't think that's a good idea. Can't hide forever? May as well walk in yourself instead of being dragged by gossip. She thought about it. All the eyes, all the whispers she'd already heard in town. Mrs. Henderson's face. All right, she said. She wore the gray dress, the better one. Garrett gave her a shawl from the trunk in his room. Black wool, fringe on the edges. She knew without asking it had been Ellen's. Wrapped it around her shoulders anyway. His suit was dark brown, smelled like cedar and mothballs. He brushed the dust off his hat. They drove the 5 miles in the wagon, neither speaking. The church was white-clappered, bell tower pointing at the sky like a finger. They were late. Everyone else was already inside. Clara could hear the singing through the open windows. Garrett climbed down, held his hand out. She took it. Let him help her from the wagon and walked up the steps together. The singing stopped when they came through the door. Every head turned. The congregation parted like water, made space for them to walk through, but not space to sit near. They took a pew at the back, alone. The Reverend cleared his throat, started the hymn again. Voices joined in, slow and uncertain. Clara kept her eyes on the hymnal. Didn't look left or right, just sang, after, on the church steps. People filed past. Most didn't speak. A few nodded at Garrett. No one looked at Clara. Mrs. Henderson came out with her husband, stopped right in front of them. Garrett, ice in her voice. Mrs. Henderson. She looked at Clara, through Clara, turned and walked away. Sarah Calhoun touched Clara's arm as she passed. Just touched it. Kept walking. But it was something. Then Mr. Calhoun came through, old and bent, and using a cane, stopped, tipped his hat. Miss, he said to Clara, been buying eggs from the mercantile. Quality's improved remarkable since spring. Fine work you're doing. Her throat closed. She managed, thank you. He nodded at Garrett. Moved on down the steps. One person. Out of 50. Maybe one person who'd spoken kindly in the wagon heading home. Clara's hands were shaking in her lap. Garrett saw. Didn't say anything. Just drove. That night she couldn't sleep. Sat on the porch in the dark, wrapped in Ellen's shawl, listening to the coyotes and the wind. The door opened behind her. Garrett came out, sat on the step beside her. Didn't ask why she was out there. Just sat. Long silence. Then he went back inside, came back with the coffee pot and 2 cups, poured for both of them. The tin cup was warm in her hands. They sat drinking coffee in the dark, not talking, just being. His hand moved on the porch rail, closer to hers, so close she could feel the heat of it, almost touching. Didn't. She felt the almost, felt the space between their hands like something solid. Didn't move away. The moon came up. They sat there watching it rise, hands not touching, something building between them that neither one had words for yet. Finally, Garrett said, "You did good today." She nodded. "They'll come around, or they won't. Either way, you're staying." It wasn't a question. "Yeah," she said. "I'm staying." His hand moved, half an inch closer, still not touching. She left hers where it was, inside the house. The clock struck midnight, out in the fields. Something rustled. Probably a rabbit. Probably nothing important. But then Clara heard it again. Closer this time. The sound of a horse coming up the road in the dark. August came mean, heat that sat on your chest like a weight, made the chickens pant in the shade, turned the dirt to dust. Clara needed lamp oil and coffee. Garrett was 3 miles out, fixing fence, told her he'd be gone all day. She took the wagon herself. 5 miles to town, the horses moving slow in the heat. The mercantile was cooler inside, but not by much. Smelled like roasted coffee and new fabric, and the sweat of the people who'd been in earlier. Clara found the lamp oil on the back shelf. The Arbuckle's coffee in the bin carried them to the counter. Mrs. Henderson stood there, looked at the items, looked at Clara, didn't reach for them. "We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone," she said. Voice loud enough for the other customers to hear. 2 women by the fabric bolts. A man waiting for his order. All watching now. Clara's hands tightened on the lamp oil jug. "I have money." "I'm sure you do." Mrs. Henderson's smile was thin and sharp. "Still our right to refuse." The other customers were staring. Clara felt every eye, felt the heat rising in her face. The sick drop in her stomach. Set the lamp oil down. Set the coffee down. Turned and walked out. Didn't run. Wouldn't give them that. The sun hit her like a fist when she stepped outside, 5 miles back. She climbed into the wagon, turned the horses, started home, past the church, the schoolhouse, the last few houses on the edge of town, then just prairie and heat shimmer, and the long road stretching ahead. Her hands were shaking on the reins. She gripped them tighter, made them stop. The horses plodded. The wagon creaked. The sun climbed higher. She thought about turning around, thought about trying the general store on the other side of town smaller. Might not have heard yet. Thought about a lot of things. Kept driving. By the time she got home, her dress was soaked through with sweat. Her face burned, her throat dry as the dust. She put the horses away, drew water from the well, drank until her stomach hurt, sat on the porch steps, didn't go inside, just sat there while the sun moved across the sky and the chickens scratched in their yard and her hands finally stopped shaking. Heard the wagon coming back around 4. Garrett driving too fast for the heat. He pulled up, jumped down before the horses had fully stopped, saw her face, went still. What happened? Not a question. Flat. She told him, all of it. Mrs. Henderson's smile, the people watching, the long walk back with nothing. His jaw clenched. He unhitched the horses, put them in the barn, came back out, climbed back into the wagon. Where are you going? Town. Garrett, don't. But he was already moving, gone in a cloud of dust. She sat there until the sun started setting, until the shadows got long and the air finally cooled a degree or two, until she heard the wagon coming back. He pulled up, climbed down, started unloading lamp oil, coffee, flour, sugar, bacon wrapped in paper, set it all on the porch. "What did you do?" she said. "Opened an account." He lifted the flour sack. "Under your name, told Henderson she fills your orders or I take my business to the General Clothes store across town. All of it. Every month." Clara stared at the supplies. "You didn't have to. Had to do what's right. That's all." He carried the flour inside, came back for the rest. His movements were sharp, angry. She had never seen him angry before. That evening, neither of them could settle. Too hot to cook much. They ate bread and butter, cold well water from the bucket, sat on the porch after, but the anger was still there, hanging in the air between them. Sarah Calhoun came by the next morning, brought a recipe for pickling handwritten, careful script on good paper, stayed for coffee. "Heard what happened at the Mercantile," she said. Didn't apologize for it, just stated fact. "Mrs. Henderson's always been that way. Mean when she's scared." "Scared of what?" "Change. People doing things different than she expects." Sarah stirred sugar into her coffee. "Don't let her run you off. That's what she wants." After Sarah left, Clara worked the garden harder than she needed to. Pulled weeds that were barely there, tied up tomato plants that didn't need it. Garrett found her out there at noon. "Should eat something," he said. "Not hungry." He left. Came back with bread and cheese on a plate. Set it on the fence post. Went back to the barn. She ate it eventually. When her hands stopped moving and she realized she was exhausted, the next week, one of the neighbors stopped buying eggs. Started getting them from the Hendersons' Mercantile instead. Garrett found out when he took the wagon to town to sell. Came back quiet. Didn't mention it at first. Clara knew anyway. Could see it in his face. "How much did you lose?" "Doesn't matter. It does if it's because of me." She was sitting on the porch, mending a torn apron. Set it down. "I should leave. Before this costs you more." He turned, looked at her like she'd spoke nonsense. "You're not leaving, but your business, standing with folks who can't see straight, isn't worth keeping." He said it flat, final. "Already made my choice. You're staying." At night, Clara couldn't sleep. Got up around midnight, took a lantern to the garden, started weeding by lamplight. Needed her hands busy. Needed to do something that made sense. She was on her knees in the dirt, pulling grass from around the bean plants, when she heard footsteps. Garrett came across the yard carrying a second lantern. Didn't say a word. Just set it down at the other end of the row and started working. They weeded in the dark. The lanterns made circles of yellow light. Moths battered against the glass. The dirt was cool now, easy to work. She could hear him breathing, the scrape of roots being pulled, the pile of weeds growing. Midnight passed. 1 o'clock, still working. Clara's back ached. Her hands were filthy. She didn't care, just kept pulling weeds, clearing space for the plants to grow. Garrett moved closer, working the same row now. They met in the middle. Both stopped, looked at each other across the lantern light. Clara's voice came out rough. You're losing customers because of me. Your reputation, probably more than you're saying, don't care. You should, Clara. He waited until she looked at him. I don't care what they think. You understand? Let them talk. Let them stop buying eggs. Let them do whatever they want. You're not leaving. Her throat went tight. She looked down at her dirty hands. Why? She said. Barely a whisper. He didn't answer right away, just sat back on his heels, looking at the garden, at everything they'd built here together. The beans heavy on the vines, the tomato plants taller than her waist, the squash sprawling across half the plot. Because this place has been dead for 2 years, he said finally, and you brought it back to life. Brought me back to life. Maybe. I'm not giving that up for anything. She couldn't speak, couldn't look at him, just nodded. They worked until dawn started graying the eastern sky, until the roosters began crowing and the lanterns were burned down to nothing. Then they stood, brushed the dirt off their knees, carried the lanterns back to the house. Neither one mentioned what he'd said, but it sat between them now, real and solid and impossible to ignore. Clara went to collect eggs. Garrett went to fix the fence. They moved through the morning like they always did. But something had shifted. Some line had been crossed in the dark. That afternoon, Clara was in the chicken yard when she heard hoofbeats coming up the road. Looked up, saw a man on a roan horse, wearing a dusty suit and a derby hat. Too fine for these roads. Too deliberate. He pulled up by the porch, smiled when he saw her. Her stomach dropped to her feet. She knew that smile, knew that face. Thomas Whitmore, Michael's brother. The man dismounted, tied his horse, walked toward her like he had every right. Hello, Clara, he said. Been looking for you. Clara's hands went numb. The egg basket slipped, hit the dirt. Eggs cracked open, yolk bleeding into the dust. Thomas Whitmore smiled wider, took off his derby hat, wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. Silk, monogrammed. Too fine for a man who had any honest business out here. You're looking well, he said. Country life agrees with you. She couldn't speak, couldn't move. Just stood there while her vision tunneled and her heart hammered so hard she thought she might be sick. Nothing to say. He stepped closer. She stepped back. He noticed. Smiled again. Come now, Clara. We're practically family. Or we were supposed to be. Before you decided to ruin my brother's reputation. Her voice came out cracked. I didn't ruin anything. He was already married. Details. Thomas waved his hand like he was brushing away flies. The point is, you've caused our family considerable embarrassment and expense. That's why I'm here, to settle accounts. Garrett's voice cut through from behind her. Who are you? Clara spun. He was standing by the barn, holding a hammer. Must have been working inside. Heard the voices. Thomas's smile didn't waver. Extended his hand. Thomas Whitmore. I'm Clara's brother-in-law. Well, almost was. Before the unfortunate misunderstanding. Garrett didn't take the hand. Looked at Clara. Saw her face white, shaking. Set the hammer down carefully. Walked over. That right? He asked her. You know this man? She nodded. Couldn't get more out. Thomas filled the silence. Just here to discuss some family business. Financial matters. Nothing for you to concern yourself with. Mr. Garrett. And if it concerns Clara, it concerns me. His voice was flat. Dangerous in a way Clara had never heard before. What financial matters? Thomas reached into his coat, pulled out papers folded, official-looking, heavy stock, wax seals, held them up but didn't hand them over yet. Clara stole from our family, money from the wedding fund, several valuable items, my mother's jewelry, some silver. We've been looking for her for months. Finally traced her here. He looked at Clara. $200 should cover it. Restitution. We'll call it even, and I'll be on my way. That's a lie. Clara's voice broke on the word. I never took anything. He gave me $50 for the train ticket. That's all. I left everything else. You have proof of that? Thomas asked, still smiling. She had nothing but her word. Didn't think so. He unfolded the papers. I have witness statements, itemized list of what's missing, all properly notarized. Sheriff will be very interested in seeing these, unless, of course, we can settle this privately. Garrett took the papers, read them. His jaw tightened with each line. Clara wanted to run, wanted to disappear into the prairie and never stop, felt the shame crawling up her throat, choking her. Everything she'd built here, the garden, the chickens, the careful trust she and Garrett had grown, all of it about to be ripped away by lies written on expensive paper. How much time? Garrett said. Week's end, 7 days. Thomas put his hat back on. After that, I take these to the county sheriff. Let the law handle it. He mounted his horse. Pleasure doing business with you folks. Rode away, dust rising behind him. Clara stood there staring at the broken eggs in the dirt. Yellow yolk soaking into the dust. Her eggs, her work, everything she'd done here, turned to nothing in the span of 5 minutes. Her legs gave. She didn't just sit. She went down hard, knees hitting the dirt, hands catching herself, palms sinking into the chicken yard muck where the water trough had overflowed. Black mud squeezed between her fingers. She knelt there in it, dress soaking up the filth, and couldn't make herself stand. Garrett was beside her, hands under her arms, trying to help her up. Don't. Her voice was raw. Don't touch me. She looked at her hands, covered in muck. Everything she touched turned dirty. I'm ruining you. Your reputation. Your life. Clara. He has papers, witnesses, official documents. She was still on her knees in the mud. Couldn't get up. And I have nothing. Just my word. And who's going to believe me? Woman living alone with a man she's not married to. Town already thinks I'm... She choked on it. Garrett knelt in the mud beside her, his good work pants sinking into the same filth. Look at me. She couldn't. Clara. Look at me. She did. Her face streaked with dirt where she'd tried to wipe away tears with muddy hands. Tell me the truth, he said. Right now. Did you steal from his family? No. The word came out fierce. I never took anything that wasn't given. Michael put me on that train with $50 and told me to disappear. That's what I did. Then we fight this. How I can't prove. Maybe you can't. But I can ask questions. Send telegraphs. Find out if Michael Whitmore's really married like you said. Find the wife in St. Louis. Get church records. His hands were on her shoulders now, mud and all. You're not alone in this. She looked at him, at this man kneeling in chicken yard muck in his good pants because she'd fallen, and he'd followed her down rather than let her stay there by herself. I should leave, she whispered. Tonight, before this touches you more than it already has. No, Garrett, you don't understand. I understand just fine. His grip tightened. You're staying. We're going to fight this. Together. But what if we can't win? What if... Then we lose together, but we don't quit before we start. He stood. Pulled her up with him. They were both covered in mud now. Come on. Inside. Tell me everything. The whole story. Every detail you remember. She let him lead her to the porch. Sat on the steps. Couldn't go inside like this. Started talking. Told him all of it. How she'd been a governess in Pittsburgh. Family name Morrison. Michael had courted her proper for a year. Flowers, walks, met her employers, made it respectable. Asked her to marry him in their parlor. Ring and everything. She'd said yes. Started planning. Made her own dress. Plain but good. Invited the few friends she had. Week before the wedding, a woman came to the Morrison house, asked for Clara by name, said she was Jane Whitmore, Michael's wife, from St. Louis, married June 1881, had the certificate, had photographs, 2 children. Clara had confronted Michael that night. He didn't deny it, said it was complicated, said she wouldn't understand. Gave her $50 and put her on the next train west. Told her to start over. Don't contact him. Don't contact Jane. Just go. So I did, she said. Her voice was dead. Got as far west as the money would take me. Ended up here. Ran out of money. Started stealing eggs because I was hungry and desperate and didn't know what else to do. She looked at her mud-caked hands. And now his brother's here to squeeze whatever he can out of the scandal. Probably figured a woman alone would be easy prey. You're not alone, Garrett said. I am. Though, against those papers, against his lies. She wiped her face. Left more mud. He'll go to the sheriff. They'll believe him over me. Then I'll be arrested for theft. You'll be... Her breath hitched. You'll be known as the man who harbored a criminal. Or, Garrett said slowly, we prove he's lying. How? Telegraph to Pittsburgh, to the church in St. Louis where Michael married Jane. Get proof he was already married when he courted you. That makes you the victim, not the criminal. Clara stared at him. That costs money, telegraph fees. And there's no guarantee they'll respond, or that anyone will care even if we prove it. I care. He stood. Wait here. He went inside, came back with his coat, started putting it on despite the mud on his clothes. Where are you going? Town. Telegraph office closes at 6. I can make it if I hurry. He checked his pocket watch. Need you to write down everything you remember. Church name in St. Louis. The Morrison family's address in Pittsburgh. Anything that helps. Garrett, this is... She couldn't finish. Couldn't name what it was. This man spending his money, his time, his reputation on her word against official-looking documents. I'll be back by dark. He was already moving to the barn. Write it all down. Don't leave anything out. She sat there on the porch, covered in chicken yard mud while the sun moved across the sky. Went inside, finally. Washed her hands and face. Found paper and pencil. Wrote everything she could remember. Church of St. Luke, St. Louis. Michael Whitmore married Jane Sorensen. June 1881. Morrison family. Pittsburgh. She was their governess, 1881 to 1883. Michael worked at Henderson and Associates' law office. Her hand shook writing it. Seeing it all laid out like evidence, like it was real and not some nightmare she'd wake up from. Garrett came back after dark, unhitched the horses, came to the porch. Sent 3 telegraphs, he said. Cost $2. Should hear back in 3-4 days if we're lucky. $2. More than she made in a week. I'll pay you back, she said. Don't want your money. Then what do you want? The question hung there, heavy with everything unsaid. Want you to trust me, he said finally. Trust that I'm not leaving you to face this alone. Can you do that? She looked at him. At this man who'd found her stealing and given her work, who'd given her his dead wife's tools and seeds and shawl, who'd knelt in the mud beside her rather than let her stay down there alone. Yes, she whispered. He nodded. Went inside. She heard him moving around, heard water being poured for washing. She stayed on the porch until full dark, then went to her room, lay down in her clothes, stared at the ceiling. Sleep wouldn't come, just kept seeing Thomas's smile. The official seals on those papers. The way the whole town would look at her when they heard thief, liar, woman who destroyed a family, even if they proved Michael was married. Would it matter? Or would people just see what they wanted to see, a woman who'd lived with a man unmarried, who'd caused scandal wherever she went? Around midnight, she heard Garrett get up, heard him pace, heard him finally go outside. She got up too, found him on the porch, sitting on the steps in the dark, sat beside him. Neither spoke. The night stretched on. Stars wheeled overhead. Somewhere far off, a coyote called. Finally, Garrett said, "It's going to be all right." She wanted to believe him. Wanted to so badly it hurt. But all she could see was Thomas Whitmore's smile and the mud on her hands, and everything she'd built here crumbling to dust like those broken eggs in the yard. Thursday morning, the telegraph boy rode up. Young kid, maybe 15, dust on his face and excitement in his eyes, probably the most interesting delivery he'd made all week. Garrett was in the barn. Clara saw him from the chicken yard, watched him come out, take the yellow papers, tip the boy a nickel. The kid rode off fast, probably going to tell everyone in town about the telegraphs coming to the Garrett place. Garrett stood there reading. Read one, read the second, read them both again. Clara set down the egg basket, walked over. Her hands were shaking. He handed them to her without a word. The first was from Pittsburgh Gazette. Michael Whitmore married Jane Sorensen, June 1881. Stop St. Louis ceremony. Stop known courtship schemes stop. The second from St. Luke's Church in St. Louis. Marriage recorded Whitmore Michael to Sorensen, Jane stop. Witnesses listed John Sorensen, Mary Sorensen. Stop legal binding stop. Clara read them twice, 3 times, the words blurred. That's it, she whispered. That proves everything. Garrett took the papers back, folded them careful. Got him. Her legs went weak. She sat down right there in the dirt. Didn't care. Just sat. Garrett knelt beside her. You all right? She nodded. Couldn't speak yet. Going to town, he said. Need to talk to Mr. Calhoun, Justice of the Peace. We'll do this proper. When? Saturday. Give me time to set it up right. He helped her stand. You don't have to be there if you don't want. I'll be there. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. Not hiding from this. Saturday morning they cleaned the house, swept the floors, washed the windows, set up the parlor chairs arranged, table cleared, coffee pot ready. Clara made biscuits, put them on Ellen's good plate. Her hands shook the whole time. Garrett saw, but didn't mention it. Just worked beside her, steady and calm. Mr. Calhoun arrived first. old man with a cane and sharp eyes. Garrett met him at the door, shook his hand. "Appreciate you coming," Garrett said. "Glad to help." Mr. Calhoun looked at Clara, tipped his head. "Miss," she managed, "thank you for coming. Justice needs witnessing, and that's my job." He settled into the chair Garrett offered. "Now tell me what this is about." Garrett laid it out. Simple, direct. Thomas Whitmore's claims, the forged documents, the telegraph evidence proving Michael Whitmore was already married when he courted Clara. Mr. Calhoun examined everything. The forged papers Thomas had shown them, the telegraph responses, took his time, asked questions. Clara answered, voice barely above a whisper. "When's he coming?" Mr. Calhoun asked finally. Told him 2 o'clock. Should be here soon. They waited. Clara poured coffee. Her hand shook so bad she nearly dropped the pot. Garrett took it from her, finished pouring, handed her a cup. She couldn't drink it, just held it, feeling the heat through the china. Hoofbeats outside. 2 o'clock exactly. Thomas Whitmore knocked on the door like he owned the place. Garrett opened it. Thomas's smile faltered when he saw Mr. Calhoun sitting there. Recovered quick. "Mr. Garrett, I wasn't expecting company. Mr. Calhoun's Justice of the Peace. Thought we should do this proper." Garrett gestured to the empty chair. "Sit." Thomas sat. Still smiling, but the edges were tight now. He pulled an envelope from his coat. "I've brought the settlement papers. $200, as discussed. And we're not paying," Garrett said. "Flat." Thomas blinked. "I'm sorry. Clara didn't steal anything. Your whole story's a lie. We can prove it." The smile disappeared. "That's a serious accusation. So's fraud." Garrett spread the telegraph responses on the table. "Your brother Michael Whitmore was married in St. Louis, June 1881, to Jane Sorensen. Witnesses listed, legal and binding. He was already married when he courted Clara." Thomas looked at the papers. His face went careful, blank. "That doesn't prove she was the one deceived, not the deceiver." Garrett set out Thomas's forged documents next to the telegraphs. "These witness statements claiming she stole from your family, all lies. You made them up. Probably paid someone to notarize them. You can't prove that. Don't have to. These telegraphs prove Clara's telling the truth about your brother. Makes everything else you're claiming suspect." Garrett leaned forward. "Here's how this goes. You leave. Today. Don't come back. Don't contact Clara. Don't spread lies about her. You do any of that. Mr. Calhoun takes these documents to the county sheriff. We file fraud charges, extortion charges. See how that plays out for you." Thomas's jaw tightened. He looked at Mr. Calhoun. "You're believing him over me. I have documents. You have paper." Mr. Calhoun said. His voice was dry as dust. "He has telegraph records from 2 different sources. Independent verification. That carries weight in a courtroom." He tapped the table. "More weight than your notarized statements from witnesses who probably don't exist." The silence stretched. Clara watched Thomas's face change calculation, anger, resignation, watched him understand he'd lost. "This isn't over," he said finally. "Yes, it is." Garrett's voice was stone. "You've got until sundown to be out of the county. After that, I go to the sheriff anyway." Thomas stood, smoothed his vest. The silk handkerchief was gone, probably pawned it in the last town. His suit was dusty, worn at the elbows, all the polish scraped away. He looked at Clara. She made herself look back, made herself not flinch. "You think you've won something here," he said. "Small town like this, they'll never accept you. Never forget what you are." Clara's voice came out steady. "And what am I? A woman who destroyed a family?" "No." She stood, walked over to stand beside Garrett. "I'm a woman who got lied to by a man who was already married, who got thrown away when the truth came out. That's what happened. That's the truth. And if this town can't see that, then that's their gear failing. Not mine." Thomas stared at her. Something in his face shifted just for a second, like he was seeing her as a person for the first time, not a mark, not a target. Just someone who'd been hurt, same as he'd hurt others. Then it was gone. He picked up his hat, walked to the door, stopped there with his hand on the frame. "For what it's worth," he said, not looking back. "My brother was always a liar, even when we were kids. Mama never could break him of it." He put his hat on. "You probably dodged a worse fate." Then he left. They heard his horse, heard the hoofbeats fading down the road. Clara's legs gave out. She sat down hard in the chair. Her whole body started shaking, shoulders, hands, knees. Couldn't stop it. Garrett knelt beside her. Didn't touch her. Just there. Mr. Calhoun stood. "I'll file a report with the county. Make sure there's a record in case he tries this somewhere else." He looked at Clara. "You did good, miss. Standing up like that took courage." She couldn't answer, just nodded. After Mr. Calhoun left, the house went quiet. Just Clara and Garrett, the afternoon sun coming through the windows, the coffee gone cold in the cups. Clara bent forward, put her head in her hands. Great shaking breaths that might have been sobs, or might have been laughter, or might have been both. Garrett's hand touched her shoulder. Light, asking permission. She leaned into it, let him pull her up, pull her close, stood there with her face pressed against his shirt, shaking while he held her. "It's done," he said, voice rough. "He's gone. Can't hurt you now." She nodded against his chest, felt his heart beating, steady, constant. After a long time, she pulled back, wiped her face. "What did it cost you, the telegraphs? Mr. Calhoun's time, all of it." "Doesn't matter. It does to me." He looked at her. $2 for the telegraphs. Mr. Calhoun didn't charge, said he was glad to do it. So, $2 total. She knew he was lying, knew there was more favors owed, reputation spent, social capital burned, knew and couldn't prove it. "I'll pay you back," she said. "Don't want your money. Then what do you want?" The question hung there, heavy, loaded with everything they hadn't said. Garrett looked away. "Want you to stay. That's all. Just stay." Her throat closed. "I'm not going anywhere." "Good." He stepped back, put space between them again. "Should check on the chickens. Been a long morning, but neither of them moved." They stood there in the parlor with the cold coffee and the papers scattered on the table, and the afternoon light making everything look soft and unreal. Finally, Clara said, "Why'd you do all this? Really?" "Told you. Couldn't let him." "No." She cut him off. "The truth." "Why?" He was quiet for a long time, looking at the floor, the window, anywhere but her. "Been alone a long time," he said finally. 2 years, house was dead, ranch was dying, Woke up every morning to nothing. No reason to fix things, no reason to keep going except I didn't know how to stop. He looked at her then. Then you showed up, stealing eggs, looking like hell, proud anyway, and I saw him. He stopped, started again. Saw someone who hadn't given up yet, despite everything. You kept fighting, kept trying. Made me want to try again, too. Clara's vision blurred. Garrett. Not done. His voice was rough. You brought this place back. Garden growing, chickens laying, house feeling like a home again instead of a tomb. Brought me back, too. Maybe. So when that bastard showed up trying to take it all away, his hands clenched. Couldn't let it happen. Couldn't let him make you nothing. Because you're not nothing. You're... He stopped, looked at her. She waited. You're everything, he said. The words settled between them, true and terrifying and impossible to take back. Clara couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stand there feeling the weight of what he'd just said, what it meant, what it changed. The kitchen clock struck 4. Outside, the chickens needed feeding. The garden needed watering. Life kept moving whether they were ready or not. Garrett cleared his throat. Should get to work. Yeah, but neither moved. Annually, Clara crossed the space between them, stood close, looked up at him. Thank you, she said, for fighting for me, for believing me, for... Her voice broke. For everything, he nodded. Didn't trust himself to speak. She could tell. She reached up, touched his face. Just her fingertips against his jaw, rough with stubble. Warm. He closed his eyes. She pulled back, went to the kitchen. Started washing the coffee cups with hands that still shook. Heard him leave through the front door. Heard his footsteps across the porch. Gone. That night she couldn't sleep again. Too much adrenaline still burning through her system. Too many thoughts circling. Thomas's face when he realized he'd lost, and Mr. Calhoun's steady presence. Garrett's words. You're everything. She got up, went to the kitchen, found Garrett already there, sitting at the table in the dark. Couldn't sleep either, she asked. No. She sat across from him. The moonlight coming through the window made everything silver and shadow. What happens now, she said. We keep going. Garden, chickens, life. Just like that. Just like that. But it wasn't just like that. Everything had changed. They both knew it. Clara looked at her hands. People are still going to talk. About me living here. Working for you. They'll say, let them say it. He met her eyes. Don't care anymore. Already made my choice. You staying or not? I'm staying. Then nothing else matters. She wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe it could be that simple. Outside, something moved in the darkness. An animal, probably. Fox or coyote after the chickens. Garrett stood. Should check that. He went to the door, opened it, stepped out onto the porch. Clara followed. They stood there looking at the dark yard. The garden invisible in the shadows. The chicken coop quiet. Nothing moved. Clara felt it anyway, the sense that something was about to shift, change, break open into something new. Garrett turned to her, started to speak. Hoofbeats on the road, fast, coming closer. They both froze. A rider appeared in the moonlight, coming hard, pulled up at the gate, didn't dismount. Young man Clara didn't recognize. Mr. Garrett, he called. You, Mr. Garrett. Yeah, Message from town. Mr. Calhoun sent me. Says you need to come first thing tomorrow. Important. Wouldn't say what. Just that you need to come. Both of you. He rode off before they could ask questions. Clara looked at Garrett. What do you think? I don't know. His jaw was tight. But we'll find out tomorrow. They didn't sleep. Just sat on the porch watching the road until dawn grayed the eastern sky. At first light, they hitched the wagon. Clara wore her gray dress, Ellen's shawl, Garrett his suit that smelled of cedar. Neither ate breakfast, just drove the 5 miles in silence. Dust rising behind them. Town was quiet. Sunday morning, most folks still in their houses, getting ready for church. The Calhoun place sat at the end of Main Street. White clapboard, porch swept clean. Mr. Calhoun met them at the door. Come in. Coffee's on. They followed him to the parlor. Mrs. Calhoun was there, Sarah too, all three looking serious. Clara's stomach dropped. Something was wrong. Had to be. Mr. Calhoun gestured to the chairs. They sat. He poured coffee, handed cups around, sat himself. Got word yesterday afternoon, he said, from the county sheriff about Thomas Whitmore. Clara's hands went cold around the cup. He's wanted, Mr. Calhoun continued. 3 counties over. Been running the same scheme for 2 years. Finds women who've been jilted or abandoned. Threatens them with fake documents. Extorts money. You're the 7th he tried it on. Clara couldn't speak. Sheriff wants to know if you'll testify. Help put him away proper. Mr. Calhoun looked at her. I told him I'd ask. No pressure. But it'd help other women. Stop him from doing this again. Garrett's voice. She doesn't have to. I'll do it, Clara said. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. When? Trial's set for next month. County seat. And you'd need to be there too, 3 days. Tell your story. Answer questions. She nodded. Hands shaking, but voice steady. I'll be there. Mrs. Calhoun leaned forward. That's brave, dear. Not many would. Not brave. Just tired of running. Clara set down her cup. Tired of being scared. After, standing on the Calhoun's porch, Sarah touched Clara's arm. You should come to church today, and with us, show them you're not hiding. Clara looked at Garrett. He nodded. All right, she said. They followed the Calhoun wagon to the white church with his bell tower, walked in together Calhouns, Garrett, Clara. The congregation was already singing, heads turned. This time Clara walked down the center aisle. Didn't look away. The Calhouns took a pew near the front. Clara and Garrett sat with them. After the service, on the steps, people filed past. Some nodded, some didn't. Mrs. Henderson walked by without looking, but her husband tipped his hat. Small thing, something. Old Mr. Morrison, who owned the feed store, stopped. Heard about the trouble. Glad it worked out. He looked at Garrett. Be needing supplies soon. Bring your list by. 1 more customer back. Maybe more would follow, maybe not. On the drive home, Clara said, Thank you. For what? Standing with me, in church, in front of everyone. He kept his eyes on the road. Where else would I be? Late September. The garden gave its last final tomatoes. Beans gone to seed, squash vines turning brown. Clara spent a morning gathering everything, filling baskets. The surplus was more than they could use, more than they could sell. That evening, sitting on the porch, she said, We should have people over. Share this. Thank the ones who helped. Garrett looked at her. People, Calhouns, Sarah and whoever she's courting, anyone who was kind. She picked at a splinter in the step. Show them I'm not hiding, that this is real. He thought about it, nodded. All right. When? Next Saturday. Give us time to prepare. They worked 3 days, cleaned the house until the windows shone. Clara baked bread loaf after loaf, using the last of the wheat flour. Garrett smoked a quarter of venison, slow over hickory. They set up trestle tables in the yard under the cottonwood trees, borrowed chairs from the church. Saturday afternoon, the wagons started coming. Calhoun's first, the old man, his wife, Sarah and a young man Clara didn't know, then the Morrisons from the feed store, a few others. Not many, maybe 15 people total. But enough. Clara met them in her brown calico dress, the good one she'd mended and pressed, hands clean, hair pinned up. Garrett stood beside her, making introductions. This is Clara, he said to each one. My poultry manager, garden keeper, partner in making this place work again. Partner. He said it clear and formal, public claim. Clara felt her throat close, managed to smile, shake hands, welcome people to the tables. The food was simple but abundant. Garden vegetables roasted with salt and butter, preserved fruits in glass jars. Clara's bread, still warm, Garrett's smoked venison, sliced thin, coffee in the big enamel pot. People filled their plates, sat in the shade. Children ran in the yard, the Morrison kids, Sarah's young cousins. Their laughter carried on the afternoon air. Mr. Calhoun stood, tapped his cup with a spoon. Everyone quieted. Want to say a few words, he said. About honest work and honest folks. This ranch was dying 2 years back. Everyone knew it. Garrett was dying with it, if we're being truthful. He looked at Clara. Then this young lady came along, started working, started fixing things, started bringing life back to a place that needed it. He raised his cup. To Clara, and to Garrett for having the sense to keep her. People drank. Some smiled. Some looked uncomfortable, but they drank. Sarah came over while Clara was refilling the bread basket. That took courage, she said quietly. Letting them all see you like this. Didn't have much choice. Couldn't hide forever. Still, you could have left. Started over somewhere else. You stayed. Sarah squeezed her hand. That matters. Afternoon stretched long. The sun moved across the sky, turned everything gold. People ate, talked, laughed. The Morrison kids played tag around the tables. Mrs. Calhoun helped Clara serve. Didn't make it seem like charity. Just 2 women working together. Mrs. Henderson didn't come. Clara had known she wouldn't. Didn't mourn it. By sunset, people started leaving, loading wagons, gathering children, saying goodbyes. Mr. Morrison shook Garrett's hand, mentioned needing chicken feed delivered next week. Business talk. Normal. Sarah hugged Clara. Come by sometime, just to visit. Bring some of that bread. I will. Then they were gone. Just Clara and Garrett in the yard with empty tables and dirty dishes and the smell of smoke from the fire pit. They worked together, cleaning up. Easy rhythm now, practiced. She washed plates in the basin. He dried and stacked. She swept the porch. He carried chairs back to the shed. The sun went down. The sky turned purple, then dark. Stars came out. Clara stood by the empty tables, looking at where people had sat, where children had played. Proof that she belonged here now. Not fully accepted. Maybe, but not rejected either. Garrett came up beside her. Well, better than I expected. People are curious. Wanted to see if the stories were true. He looked at the dark garden. Seeing you here, seeing what you've built, harder to believe lies after that. She nodded, felt the exhaustion settling into her bones. Good exhaustion. Earned. Been thinking, she said, about next year's garden. Could expand it. Maybe another 20 feet. If you want. And she heard what she was saying. Assumption she'd be here. Next spring. Next year. Garrett heard it too. Been thinking the same about the chickens. Could build a second coop. Maybe get some ducks too. If you're willing. Business talk. Also planning a future together. I'm willing. She looked at him. Long as you're sure about me staying, about all of this. Clara, he turned to face her. Haven't been sure about much these last 2 years, but I'm sure about this. About you. You're staying. That's decided. Her breath caught. What if I mess it up? What if... Then we'll fix it. Same as we fixed the garden. The chicken coop. Everything else. He took her hand. Just held it. Not doing this alone anymore. Neither of us are... She looked at their joined hands, his calloused and scarred, hers dirt-stained and rough, both of them marked by work, by survival, by choosing to stay when leaving would have been easier. All right, she said. They stood there as full dark settled, the stars bright overhead, the garden sleeping for winter, the chickens quiet in their coop, everything resting, waiting for spring. Garrett didn't let go of her hand. She didn't pull away. They walked to the garden together, looked at the empty rows, bean poles bare, tomato stakes waiting to be pulled, squash vines brown and spent. Next spring they'd plant again, expand, grow. Thank you, Clara said, for giving me a chance, for believing me, for... Her voice broke. For everything. Nothing to thank me for. You earned it. Every bit. Still, he squeezed her hand. You brought this place back to life. Brought me back too. That's worth more than thanks. They stood in silence. The autumn air cool on their faces. The smell of turned earth and dried leaves and wood smoke from the fire pit. Clara thought about where she'd been 6 months ago. Stealing eggs in a barn, terrified and alone. Thought about where she was now, family in her own garden, not legally hers. Maybe. But hers in every way that mattered. With a man who'd fought for her, believed her, stood beside her when it would have been easier to let her go. I'm happy here, she said. Quiet. True. Happier than I've been in years, maybe ever. Garrett's thumb moved across her knuckles. Small gesture. Said everything. Good, he said. Because I need you here. This place needs you. I need... He stopped. Started again. Just need you. Simple. Her heart hammered. This was crossing a line. Moving from partnership to something else. Something neither had named yet. But she crossed it anyway. I need you too. The words hung between them, true and terrifying and impossible to take back. Garrett turned to her. His free hand came up, touched her face, gentle, asking permission. She leaned into it, let him cup her cheek, let him see her, really see her. All the broken places, all the scared places, all the hoping places. Clara, his voice was rough. Yeah, I want, he swallowed hard. Want to do this right, properly, not rush. But I want you to know. I know. She did. Could see it in his eyes, feel it in the way he held her. I know. He nodded. Stepped back. Put space between them again, but kept holding her hand. They walked back to the house together. The porch light burning, the kitchen waiting, tomorrow's work already planned, chickens to feed, eggs to collect, the last of the garden to clear, life simple and good and earned. At the door, Garrett stopped. Sleep well. You too. But neither moved. Just stood there in the lamplight, hands joined, something building between them that had time to grow, time to become whatever it was meant to be. Finally, Clara pulled away. Went inside. Garrett followed. They moved to their separate rooms, doors closing soft. But the house didn't feel lonely anymore. Didn't feel empty. Just quiet. Peaceful. Waiting. Clara lay in her narrow bed, listening to him move around in the next room. Heard him settle. Heard the house creak and sigh around them both. She closed her eyes, felt the exhaustion pulling her down. Let it come. Tomorrow they'd start clearing the garden for winter, planning next spring, building the second chicken coop. Living the life they'd built together from dirt and work, and the choice to stay when running would have been easier. She'd testify at the trial, face Thomas Whitmore in a courtroom, tell her truth in front of strangers. But she wouldn't be alone. Garrett would be there. The Calhouns probably, maybe even Sarah. People who'd seen her work, seen her stay, seen her worth. That mattered. More than acceptance. More than approval. Being seen, being known, being chosen anyway. She fell asleep thinking about spring planting, about expansion, about the future opening up ahead of them like the prairie wide and uncertain and full of possibility. In the next room, Garrett lay awake a while longer, listening to the house, to her breathing through the wall, to the silence that wasn't lonely anymore. He thought about Ellen, about how she'd want him to live, really live, not just survive. Thought about Clara, how she'd walked into his barn stealing eggs and somehow stolen his heart instead. No, not stolen. He'd given it. Slowly, carefully, one day at a time. He closed his eyes, let sleep come. Tomorrow they'd work together, same as always, but different now. Everything different. Outside the window, the stars wheeled overhead. The prairie grass whispered in the wind. The chickens slept in their coop. The garden rested. And in the small ranch house at the end of the long road, two people slept under the same roof. Not quite together, not quite separate. Somewhere in between, where all good things start, with time and patience and the choice to stay, to build, to grow. The autumn night settled deep. The first frost would come soon, then winter, then spring. They'd be ready, together. There's something about watching two people choose each other quietly, without fanfare, that sits heavy in the chest, not sad, exactly, just tender. The kind of tender that reminds you how hard it is to trust again after the world's shown you its sharp edges. I think many of us know what it feels like to need a second chance we're not sure we deserve. To stand in someone's doorway with empty hands, hoping they'll see past the dirt, and the desperation to whatever's still worth saving underneath. And maybe some of us have been on the other side too, the one who had to decide whether to open the door or close it, whether to protect what little we have left or risk it on someone broken. Garrett and Clara's story doesn't tie up clean. There's no wedding at the end, no town suddenly changing its mind about who belongs and who doesn't. Just two people learning to sleep in the same house without feeling so alone. Just a garden that needed tending and hands willing to tend it. Some stories end there, in the quiet middle of things, and that's all right. They're allowed to rest unresolved. Thank you for sitting with this one, for staying through the uncomfortable parts and the uncertain parts, for listening.